all right. Week 4. Welcome to week 4 class. This is a great week because you know why? We are having class this week in beautiful Rome. Yes, we are in Italy. Oh my God, right down here at the Colosseum. Fortunately, yes, I had the opportunity to spend time in Rome. I was stationed in Italy, and it was great. So we not only Venice, but went to Rome, and it was just awesome. So I know how excited you are as a class you're sitting out here again and just enjoying the sights of Rome. And the first thing you think of, you know what? We should be having class right now. And you know what? And I heard your cry. I heard your call. So yes, we're going to have week 4 right here in Rome. So as we look at week 4, we're going to go into, we're still in data gathering. Now, as I always say, you're going to see this slide. Risk, likelihood of a threat agent taking advantage of a vulnerability. And what? Yes, you got the corresponding business impacts. All right, this week we'll look at technical safeguards. We talked about, oh my God, I misspelled words. You see that? Categories. Yes, technical safeguard categories. Makes me sound like I'm just a little European. We'll talk about categories today. So technical, and this is where I know most people love to live. If you're in security, you count the high tech guys, is in this technical arena. So when we talk about some of the technical categories, you think about information control. And what are those? Those are things that deal with your protection of sensitive and critical information. User errors, things like input validation, and how are errors reported. You ever think about that? So when an error happens, does it just show up on your screen? Many times you don't even know, but that back-end database should be having some type of error, what's called error handling. How does it handle an error? Does it notify the database administrator? Does it notify security? Does it send an email? Does it do an alert? Is your Splunk, is your SIM system to alert it? All those things. So how you protect information and information control. With respect to business continuity, I know we talked about that last week, but now last week we looked at these from an administrative perspective. This week we're looking at from a technical perspective. How do you protect sensitive data, critical data? Is it properly backed up? What type of backup strategy are we using? How are annual backups done? How are incremental backups done? Are those backups maintained at a safe location? Are they on-site, off-site? So many things that you want to think about from a technical perspective as we look at business continuity. From a system security, like I say, this is kind of more overarching of how we're doing application security, not from a policy perspective. Now, this is from a technical perspective. Who has access to applications? Who can make changes? And again, change management. The technical aspect of change management, meaning this is not the CCB, this is not your change management board, but this is now how does our IT personnel, priv users, how they actually make those changes, document the changes, be ready to roll back in case that change that you actually made didn't work, and now we want to roll the system back to a known good condition. The architecture, this is the topology. This is where you bring your Wireshark tools and other network tools to play, so that the network components, topology, all your transmission layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, all those things are working well. You've got your firewalls at the perimeter and as well as inside firewalls. So now we're looking at the risk associated with those types of systems and what risk is associated with things that may be internet facing, things that may be internally facing with respect to the architecture, as well as the individual components, devices and subsystems, what type of security policies. Now here again, when I say policies, I'm talking about technical policies, not so much administrative policies, but how your GPO settings on Windows systems excuse me, are set up, how your if you have a Linux or a Red Hat environment, how those things are done. Because there's a lot, now you get into the kind of the meat of your network. Now we're talking about how system configuration, how your SIM, how your IDSs, and I keep saying use that term SIM. I'm assuming everyone knows what that means. Your system, your security information and event management system, like whether it's Splunk or whatever other tool you may be using as a SIM. And that influences or impacts how we do access control and continuous monitoring of that environment. Configurations, like this is talking about now, this is our systems deployed in a secure configuration. We've got things like what we call STIGs, the security technical implementation guides that says, or hardening guides, so that when a system is deployed, it's properly hardened, least functionality, things that are turned off that are not going to be used, these are put into play. And there are security controls that govern least functionality, that govern configuration management of our systems. But we're looking at what risks are associated with these. So when we're doing a risk assessment, we know where those vulnerabilities are because we know the threat agents that are trying to get to those vulnerabilities. And really, probably not last but least, but really last and probably most important is protection of the data itself, right? To protect sensitive data, whether it's data, we talked about this before, how are we protecting data at rest, data in use, data in transit. As well as user accounts associated with that data. And this is becoming more and more complex from a risk perspective as we are looking at things like zero trust and your different access control models. Before, we were just pretty much, discretionary access control. You got folders, your DACet, you put a discretionary access, and whoever the information owner could allow anybody to have access to that information. Find out, that was not probably the most secure way of doing that. Then we moved into role-based access control. Actually, not only DAC, but then we had MAC, mandatory access control. That was where we used labels, like top secret, secret, confidential, unclassified. So that way you had to match that label. If you wanted to see top secret information, you had to have a top secret clearance. If you want to see secret information, you had to have a secret clearance, as well as a need to know. Just because you had the clearances and you didn't have the need to know. Then we said, that's great, but still that is very rigid. So now we move into role-based, RBAC, role-based access control, meaning if you are a system administrator, if that's your role, then by default, these are the information stores you have access to. Now we also move to policy-based and really peeling back policy-based, because that now actually looks at metadata and looks at so many other factors associated with the data store that now we have to have the right policy. So managing data and the risk and assessing the risk associated with protecting sensitive data is a growing area. Now, the riot process, can that be used with technical security controls? Of course they can. Because you're probably going to be forced in some areas to do these because your network team, your IT team isn't going to give you the accesses and they shouldn't, that you would need to do a full up assessment on those. So there are things that here again associated with technical security categories that is very important to address. All right, so like I say, week 4, like I say, that's when we kind of jumped into the middle of the techie pool. I know all the techie guys are going, yeah, baby, I got it now. But don't worry, there's more to come. We'll see you in week 5. Have a great week. Reach out if you have any questions.